And one of the reasons next year is so important, it seems to me, is because we've got to have a fundamental change in this approach in our attitude about our people, our society, and quite frankly, what we should expect from folks like Wal-Mart. Now, I commend all those local groups that have been trying to deal with this problem. I mean, that's a pretty impressive reflection on the ability of people to stand up and be counted on these kinds of issues. But those folks in Inglewood shouldn't have had to spend the kind of time and effort they did to deal with this particular problem. And, you know, we'll continue to have these fights. I mean, I'm not as familiar as many of you are with what is going on in Newburyport. I just happen to love Newburyport. Many, many years ago, I came out here in 1960. I'll never forget it. Bill, I don't know whether you were there at the time.
I was there in 1920.
You were there, but I'm not sure you were. I think the Congregational Church. That's when you could buy one of those mansions on High Street for $15,000.
You got it.
And remember one woman, we were trying to put together something called the Commonwealth Organization of Democrats, see if we could reform the Democratic Party. This was back in 1960, and some woman came up to me and said, "Young man, you're one of those few people from Boston that knows how to pronounce the name of this city." I said, "Well, it's Newburyport, isn't it?" "Yeah, they come up here and they call it Newburyport." I said, "Well, my mother came from Haverhill, that's why I don't know." And that's why the stakes are so high next year, folks. That's why the stakes are so high next year, because unless we elect a Congress and a president that not only understand this, but are prepared to do something about it, we're going to continue to face these kinds of challenges, and there's just no excuse for it. Particularly in a world where globalization and the kinds of forces that we know are swirling around here make it even more difficult for people to have some reasonable level of economic and health security. Now, how are we going to do that? I'm not sure Deval Patrick won because of me. It's true that we had a conversation in March of 2005 where I said, "No, look, pal, if you want to have a shot at this thing, you've got to do what I did, except once in 1978, when I was 40 points ahead of the polls, the Red Sox were 14 games ahead of the All-Star break. Remember? And Dukakis and the Red Sox went down the drain simultaneously. He said, "You've got to go out and organize every precinct in the state." And he did. And he won by 21 percentage points. And my own view, because I'm very concerned about next year, very concerned about next year, my own view is that unless we do nationally what Deval Patrick did, and many of you did for him with him in 2006, our chances of electing a president and a Congress that reflect the best in this country are going to be seriously jeopardized. And that means going out and organizing 200,000 precincts in the United States of America in every one of the 50 states. I don't buy this red-blue stuff. I think it's a lot of nonsense. Folks, the governor of the state of Oklahoma is not Democratic. The governor of the state of Colorado is not Democratic. The governor of the state of Montana is not Democratic. Kansas, what's the matter with Kansas? Nothing's the matter with Kansas. They've got a woman Democratic governor, and she is very, very good. What's happened is that we've essentially conceded 2/3 of the state to the other side without a fight. And that is not a winning strategy. And I'm not just talking, quite obviously, about winning for the sake of winning. The reason we should be fighting hard to elect new leadership in the White House and even expanded majority in the Congress is to do something about what we just saw. That's what it's all about, folks. And we can do that. But you can't do it with the president of the White House that thinks that it's socialism to expand coverage, health coverage, to 4 million kids and working parents. And by the way, every one of the Republican candidates for the presidency support the president's veto, including the guy that dropped in to the governorship briefly here in Massachusetts, whose health plan absolutely, the success of whose health plan absolutely depends on an expansion of Medicaid coverage for the kids of working families. Rudy Giuliani used the word socialism 31 times the other day in proposing a kind of half-baked health plan of his own. So I think the stakes are very clear, and I think what we've just seen says it all. And I just hope that nationally we can go to work and do what we did so successfully here last year. It really does make a difference. There's no question about it. And I guess that was my semi-rant to the folks in Ipswich. When was it? It was 2 years ago, I guess. Now, I wish I could tell you that I think our candidates, we've got a good group of candidates. I wish I could tell you that I think our candidates get this, but I don't see it. I don't see it reflected in any of the campaigns so far. We're still looking at what are essentially consultant-driven campaigns. By the way, mea culpa. 1988, we worked the grassroots very hard in the primary. I won the nomination, and then we stopped doing it in the final. Don't ask me why. Well, folks who were supposed to know something about national presidential campaigns, well, you don't do that. You know, then it's all media, it's all money, it's all marketing, and so on and so forth. That's not unimportant. But what happened here last year ought to be as clear an example as anything I can imagine of why precinct-based grassroots organizing works. And we are not going to change what we just saw unless we do that.